All right. We're 1 minute past the hour, so let's get this thing going. Thank you everybody for joining us today in our webinar on navigating scaled Agile with safe Jira Align and marketplace apps. A little bit of housekeeping as we get this webinar started. Yes, we are recording. Recording will be shared following this live webinar. Questions will be answered at the end, but please submit them whenever they come into your head. We will be tracking them, organizing them, and trying to prioritize and answering them at the end. Any questions we don't get to, we will definitely share a blog post with answers. But yeah, glad to have you here today. So this is a panel discussion, and we'll talk a little bit about the format, but let's meet who we're going to be spending the morning with. So I'm Thad West, CEO of ISOS Technology, and I'll be moderating this discussion and kind of ushering us through here. I'd like to introduce Tracy Walton. She's one of our senior Atlassian consultants, and she's spent a lot of time and a lot of work around the Agile community. Tracy, you want to say good morning?
Hi, good morning.
Great. And then we have Brad Kramer joining us from Atlassian. So Brad's part of the team that we collaborate with and help implement Jira Align. Brad works with some of Atlassian's largest customers. Brad, you want to say good morning? Brad's there, but we'll hear from him here in a little bit.
Yep, happy to be here, thanks.
There you go. Great. Okay, so here's our agenda for today, and we're going to kind of break it up into 4 sections, and with each section you'll hear from a different speaker. And what we're going to do a little bit differently is we're going to have a little discussion session after each set of slides, and that way you're not inundated with slideware. Gives a chance for us to kind of reflect and pull in some conversational aspects about it. So I'm going to kick us off with why now. We'll be talking about business agility. Tracy's going to take us through people, process, and change about digital transformation. After we cover those 2 hot buzzwords, we're going to get into the meat of it with a Jira Align deep dive demo that I'm really looking forward to. And then we'll wrap it up with kind of an overview of the tool landscape and what happens when Jira Align doesn't align. So with no further ado, let's get going. Okay, so why now? 2001 Agile Manifesto came out. So that's almost 20 years ago. And like any good manifesto, it started to define why we wanted to do things, not necessarily how. 2002, the how started to formulate. So the Scrum Alliance was created. It's more about the operational aspect of Scrum. And as the teams are churning away, building great software, using an Agile methodology, what they started to realize was, hey, we're really starting to miss a piece on how do we scale this? And so LESS was introduced around 2008. So that's large scale Scrum. It's a very, very thin, minimal Scrum at scale framework. And so teams, again, are cranking away, and they're starting to address some of those issues. Enter 2009, and Atlassian, what's happening in the Atlassian scene? Well, now the teams are able to do Scrum and Kanban added directly into Jira. They had been able to do that before, but Atlassian formally brought it into the family in 2009. So again, that's 11 years ago, so still why now? 2011, SAFe was introduced. So LESS was very, very minimal. SAFe is a lot more prescriptive and programmatic. So that came out in 2011, and then we're sitting 2019. Atlassian adds Jira Align. So there is a maturity level that we're building on a story here. That yes, Agile's been around for 20 years, but you can see some of these frameworks and tools are fairly new in the landscape. So you might be thinking, okay, that's great. I'm behind the curve, and you're really not. If you're anywhere on one of these dots here, red, yellow, or green, you are in the majority. And this data comes to us from the 14th annual State of Agile survey. It's a great survey. When we share this out, there will be a link to it. A lot of great data in there, but basically, what it found is when you start to look at Agile adoption across the industry, 77%, so the green and yellow dots, are in some level of adoption across organization-wide. So there's still a lot of opportunity out there for organizations to get Agile. So what does it mean when you're Agile? Well, from that same survey, it's like, okay, great, we're Agile, but how mature are our Agile processes? And if you look at this, 84% are still maturing their Agile process. So there's still a lot of ways to go and why we want to still talk about this and keep moving forward. The last piece I'll put is great, the teams are agile, but why are we really doing this? And this data point comes from another survey, the 2020 Business Agility Report. Again, it'll be linked. It's a great report to go look at. But what I would say is the whole goal of going agile is not because we want to just run great technology and process, but we really want our businesses agile. Why do we want our businesses agile? What were some of the outcomes? Organizational benefits, so better collaboration, communication, and better ways of working. This shouldn't be a surprise, but commercial benefits, speed to market. So that's one of the tenets of agile software is, hey, we want to get to market faster. Workforce related benefits, so motivation, employee satisfaction. So employees do not want to work on multi-year long running projects. So it really helps keeping an engaged workforce as well. And the survey actually happened after COVID, and businesses that were more agile, it should be no shock that they were able to faster adapt to the changes for COVID-19. I think the final, this is kind of the why to do it from a bottom line perspective. So on the left, we have organizations that did not embrace agile. And you look at their market capitalization, which is a metric of stock price times the number of outstanding shares gives their market cap. And the organizations on the left did not embrace agile. The organization on the right did embrace agile. This comes from a piece from Forbes in May of 2020. Again, it'll be linked in there, and I invite everybody to go read it, but it really solidifies the business cases. Why do we want to go agile? Okay, so that's kind of just setting the landscape on why we want to go agile. And based on that, Brad, I kind of want to pull you into the conversation a little bit. You work with some of the largest customers at Atlassian. Does this business agility, agile adoption, does this ring true for you? Can you share a story about that?
Yeah, we see a lot of our customers, large as well as smaller customers, all looking to make adjustments in the way that they're delivering value to the marketplace. And that typically starts with figuring out how to do more incremental delivery of value rather than the big bang at the end of the traditional waterfall project. So a lot of organizations are going through that transformation. I will say that even the largest of our customers are doing it. They're measuring those transformations in years. So it's not something that you're going to do overnight. You shouldn't do it overnight. Crawl, walk, run, fly is the best approach. Pick the value that you want to try and deliver. Identify some teams or programs that are mature enough to be able to manage the change. And that's how a lot of organizations are going through that transformation.
Oh, I love that. And I love that crawl, walk, run, fly. In that linked survey of business agility, that's exactly the nomenclature they move when they talk about business agility. So, I love that. Tracy, let's pull it back to you a little bit. One of the things I mentioned was COVID-19 and how businesses are able to respond. I know we've had customers that have been impacted. Maybe you could share one of those stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Right in March, I was working with an organization, small, medium-sized organization in the fitness industry. And so, wow, were they impacted by the change from COVID. And what was great to see for that organization was, despite the challenges that they were faced with, they had clearly put a high value on aligning their organization and their leadership around they had a cadence in place that allowed them to kind of spin on a dime and change their focus without a lot of disruption on top of the disruption that already came in. So, it was incredible to see them put this to practice under the, most unexpected pressure, when it was most needed. So it works. It's fantastic.
Yeah, look, if that's not a case for anybody, I don't think anybody had a strategic plan in place for 2020 that, hey, we're gonna hit a national a global pandemic, and our business is going to be disruptive in unimaginable ways. What are we going to do, right? It's just something you can't plan for, but by adopting these principles, it allows you to respond to. So yeah, I love that. Tracy, that's so where do you get started? We're gonna kick that back over to you. And I'm gonna stop my video so that nobody has to look at me. But take us through it.
Yeah, thanks, Ted. we're going to see some more about some tools today. We're going to take a look at Jira Align and talk about some marketplace apps, but I want to make sure that we, before we dive into the tools, that we pay some attention to, you know, your transformation and what's really at the core of your transformation. So, you know, I've worked with several organizations that are so eager to jump into implementing the next tool that's going to kind of like save their business. And don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of tools, but there's something about them. You know, tools have been created with a specific vision and a purpose to hit a problem for its customer, you know, like solve a problem for your customers. And I think, you know, we can think about our digital transformations the same way. We want to make sure we get really, really clear on what is the problem that scaling our agile operations is really going to solve. What is our vision in the end for this? Because without that vision, it's going to be really, really difficult to get in there and really, you know, like this quote says, change some of those core beliefs that exist within your organization that got you to where you are today, but maybe it won't get you to where you want to go. So again, it's really, really important not only that you have a clear understanding of the problem that your transformation is going to solve and the vision that you want to achieve, but that your entire leadership team shares that. You know, you're going to need the collective support for from your leadership team. So let's take a look a little bit at next here what the research is telling us about some of the challenges that we're facing, that organizations are facing as they take on their scaling journey. Now, I know this is a lot of information to throw at you on a slide, but let me speak to this. You know, every transformation I think is going to be met with some resistance, and we can see this here in you know, the top bar in the challenges experienced when adopting and scaling Agile. Change is not typically comfortable, so we can kind of expect that no matter what your transformation is. But then if we kind of peel back and see, well, what's the next biggest challenge that organizations are facing? And you can see there's kind of a theme here. It's related to the support of your leadership team, participation, you know, lack of vision, lack of, you know, fully adopting the Agile mindset. And I think what's kind of interesting about these particular challenges that bubble up within those organizations that are scaling, you know, like, why might it be these challenges? And I'm going to be a little presumptuous here and speculate that, you know, like we saw, Thad was talking about kind of the history of Agile and Agile at scale. And generally, typically, Agile has been adopted at the level of the teams, you know, where they have been able to adopt that mindset and organize themselves around those principles and fully adopt Agile. And I think this is indicative of like the leadership teams and management teams that haven't quite bubbled up to them. They're kind of the last crew to fully adopt those lean and agile principles. So, you know, I think that kind of speaks again to the importance of collecting your, or creating that shared vision with your leadership team, because you're going to, you know, you're going to be met with challenges along the way. So despite all of this, though, I want to say that there are plenty of organizations out there that are persevering and they're succeeding. So let's take a look at what they are experiencing in their transformation success. What I love about this slide is that the organizations are measuring their success by the increased satisfaction of their customers. This is fantastic because it's showing us that, wow, organizations are able to change and look at what are the outcomes that we're excited about as opposed to the outputs, like the sheer number of work or tickets that we've closed, right? But it's really, how are we making a difference to our customers, which is fantastic. So again, those challenges that you're going to face while you're scaling your operation, your Agile operations, they are not insurmountable. They will require some dedication and a well understood vision, you know, clear set of values and principles to work by. So let's take a look next at, regardless of where you are on your scaling journey, whether you're just, figuring out what will this mean for us, or maybe you're right in the middle of, a transformation within your organization, it's likely that you've come across SAFe, or the Scaled Agile framework. And we can see here, this is a nice graph that's showing how popular SAFe is in relation to the other methodologies that are out there. I think this speaks to how well documented and full the Scaled Agile framework is. And I think it's also indicative of the growing request or demand from our workforce saying that this is the way we want to work. And if you as an organization are not taking a look at these methodologies, you can be sure that your competitors are. All right, so if the name of this webinar is about navigating scaling Agile with SAFe. So let's go and take a look next at some recommendations that I want to leave you with, or some points that I think are really important to remember as you're navigating your own journey here. And the first one I'm going to start with is about creating a norm. Scaling really is all about simplifying. It's not about getting more complex. I think SAFe sometimes gets a bad rap or an initial bad impression because they are known for the full diagram of all the little bits and pieces that are required to scale Agile. But really, if you think about it, it is about simplifying and coming up with a collective consensus. So like I mentioned before, Agile has been adopted traditionally at the level of the team. And what we're saying as we scale is, let's take a look at how this team is, not only self-organizing around and delivering customer value, but they are actually operating within a team of teams. They are part of a larger organization. And I think SAFe assists organizations in understanding how those individual teams can really leverage the power of the collective, if you will. So what does that look like? Well, that looks like, setting up a cadence of, aligning your individual teams with those of the larger team. So you want to focus on, what are those teams that those smaller teams sit in, the team of teams. The next one here, use your brains. Thank you, Dr. Seuss, for this one. SAFe really is organization. This is what they say: organization and workflow patterns intended to guide enterprises in scaling their lean and agile practices. This is not a prescription. You must do everything that's documented or you're not safe. No, by no means. So, understand the concepts. Use your brain in how best this can be applied within your organization. And at the same time, be mindful not to kind of adapt the concepts fully out of the picture, right? Don't change it so much that you're losing the benefit that you're looking for. And then don't get caught up in the terminology. Really, same kind of thing. Understand the concepts and then use the terminology that really best fits for your organization. And then the last one here is more looks broken, and this is very good news. So why is this good news? Well, if you start to implement some of these processes and concepts from the SAFe methodology, you're going to notice some things aren't working so well. And this really is great news, because then you can address it, iterate against it. And like Brad was saying, this isn't an overnight thing. This is in the magnitude of years. So it's great news, and something that you want to remind your leaders of, because it can be a little daunting at first, possibly. So it will be more difficult to hide those issues that are preventing your teams from really focusing on delivering customer value and being really efficient about it. And just remember that that's a good thing for you. And with that, I'll hand it back to you, Thad. That's all my stuff.
That is great. Let me get my video started. No, thank you, Tracy. So, you know, one of the things in there, obviously it's the title of the webinar, it's, you touched upon it, but safe. Let's talk about that a little bit. So that can really elicit a visceral reaction from a lot of folks. You get a lot of folks that will immediately pile on as to why they don't like it. How do you bridge some of those conversations?
Yeah, you know, I have come across this in the Agile community. Sometimes people kind of get a little, they have some baggage maybe, or they have whatever opinion, but it's important to have those kinds of discussions because I think if we can find a common ground that we all agree on, that's how we can come together and really figure out what's best for our clients, for our teams, for our organizations, you know. And I think regardless of what methodology you're a fan of, I think that they all have a focus on delivering customer value and you know, working collaboratively with teams. And I think we can all agree on that and start there and then continue the conversation.
I love that. It's pulling it back into, you know, why are we doing this? We're not doing safe because we all love safe. We're not doing safe because we read a book that told us to do it. We're doing it because we want to drive customer value, right? And, you know, kind of keeping that focus when you talk about methodologies and tools, I think is really important. Brad, so, you know, transformation at an organizational level has a lot of risks. You know, what are some of those top challenges and top risks that you see out there?
I think one of the biggest challenges is for organizations to remember that an Agile team doesn't just refer to the development organization. That's often where the Agile transformation will start, because that's where the development groups can begin to gain some significant efficiencies and commit to things that they know that they can deliver. But I think the risk of not ensuring that there's executive leadership and executive sponsorship beyond simply go be Agile and then they go off and do the stuff that they've always been doing. I think that there's a risk there that the organizational change that really needs to be a part of the transformation doesn't happen because executive leadership isn't engaged and involved in a way that supports the transformation itself.
Yeah, I think that's just so key. I mean, you saw it in some of Tracy's metrics from the Agile survey, but it really is, it's not a leadership decision and then team go off and execute. It's really a journey that the leadership team needs to be on with the rest of the organization. Yeah, I love that. Okay, I'm gonna press on here a little bit, Brad, because I think everybody's dying to get to your piece here. And let me get us going.
Terrific. I will share my screen now. That I think you need to give up the share.
Oh, I can.
Sorry. No, yep. Sorry. I forgot you're doing the slides. Never mind.
Sure.
Yeah, let's talk about Jira Align. So what is Jira Align? It's a shared platform for enterprise transformation, which aggregates the work across team-level tools like Jira, and provides tools for greater visibility, alignment, collaboration, and measurement. So what does that mean in terms of the value that Jira Align provides? Well, it supports the transformation, and it does that by connecting strategy to work execution, making all the work visible at all levels of the organization, empowering teams with the business context for the work they're being asked to execute, and it focuses everyone on shared outcomes. So with that, I will now take control of the screen. And just want to double check that somebody can see my Welcome to Jira Align screen.
Looks good, Brad.
Great,
yep,
terrific. So this is the main Jira Align interface. Align is a cloud solution accessible via a standard web browser. Your users are going to navigate the product via this role-based menu on the left side of the screen. And I timed out. So sorry. So the role-based menu is organized in the typical levels of scale, starting at the enterprise level, portfolio, program, and teams. There's a special menu specifically for product-focused navigation, which includes things like ideation, personas, mind mapping, and other features. Context filtering to get questions answered, like what's the status of my initiative or what's being planned for the next quarterly increment, is done via the configuration bar at the top. You select a portfolio or program or programs and a team or teams to filter for the information that you're interested in. Then you select a time box for which you're interested. The time box enables reporting to remain consistent across Scrum and Kanban teams, regardless of their individual cadences. And you can filter on whatever time frame you're interested in. Transformation guidance can be provided via configurable checklists. So you define and configure the checklist, and then users can use the checklist to follow your prescribed process for accomplishing something. And clicking on one of the checklist items will take them directly to the part of Align that supports that functionality. That means that even your casual users can be productive from very early on in adoption of the solution. The checklists can be by role, say release train engineer or Scrum Master, or they can be a checklist for an entire process by a portfolio. Align has several configurable rooms, which are configurable dashboards. This is the strategy room, an executive view of an entire year's worth of work. It allows you to create, modify, or change mission, vision, and values. It also allows you to get a high-level view of objectives, which are handled as a separate object within Align, objectives at different levels of the organization. It also can give you a high-level view of progress against different levels of work. Those mission, vision, and values are broken down into a set of strategic goals. These are high-level goals, probably last about a year or so. Those goals then are broken down into themes, which is where investment decisions are made, typically at the portfolio or product level. They can be prioritized in order to define the importance of one investment versus another. Then at the program level, your product owners, your release train engineers, solution train engineers, however your organization is organized for Agile, will then break down those strategic themes into initiatives. That's the highest level of work item inside Jira Align. Creating and maintaining the connection between strategy and execution is going to be key to making all the work visible and ensuring that everyone is working towards the same shared outcomes. Beginning with the initiative backlog, Align users will create and prioritize work. As work is broken down into smaller pieces, each role has the ability to view the backlog from their point of view and continue the prioritization and refinement of the backlog. There are several methods for refining the backlog. All work items inside Align have one of these slide out cards with different information available in them. Prioritization can be as simple as a strategic value score and an effort swag. That might be one way you might prioritize. Or you can design a value score made up of your choices for criteria as well as weightings. Changing the scores will change the value score. Then you can analyze individual initiatives against other initiatives that are vying for the same people, the same time, the same money, and the same resources. Additional options for prioritization include scaled agile, weighted shortest job first, as well as a value engineering option for determining priority or making pivot and persevere decisions based on objectives and key results. This connection between strategy and execution, the linkage, allows us to create this why information. It provides business context for everyone in the organization, from senior level management down to individual team members, who now have visibility into why the work is important and how even the smallest stories and tasks fit into the bigger strategic picture. Refining and developing your backlog automatically creates a roadmap. The roadmap can be modified to define current requirements as well as future requirements. Long-term road mapping can be viewed by adding additional program increments or quarters onto the roadmap view. Here you can see I've started the view of the roadmap at a very high level, those strategic themes. You can then review the roadmap at that initiative level we just spoke about, and even at the feature or Jira epic level. Changes to the roadmap at higher levels will be reflected downstream in the backlog items that have been affected. Quarterly highlights can be provided for people who don't need quite as much detail. So this would be a view of work that's going to be delivered for complete. There's one that's going to be delivered in the as a part of a future increment. That's 27% complete, and finally one being planned for a program increment further in the future. Release vehicles or release events can also be viewed. Release events are handled separately from the increment time box, so you can do continuous delivery or release on demand. So these would be the highlights of those release events. Green Emerald is complete, Black Opal almost complete, Red Ruby planned for a future program increment. Once the roadmap has been defined and synchronized, organizations would then go through some kind of a quarterly planning effort, which might include the use of an electronic program board. I'm going to remove a couple of program increments. Here you'll find information about the features represented by the rectangles. In the planning period, you will find those rectangles in the unplanned sprint column. As the teams start to weigh in with their stories and the definition of when those stories are going to be started and completed, those features will move to the appropriate sprint column in the program board. Color coding helps you understand problems. So for instance, here is a feature that's being worked on by two different teams. It's connected to a higher level objective, which is actually being supported by other features worked on by other teams. And the red indicator here is probably the indication of a blockage in a dependency. Those dependencies are indicated by the chevrons. Align handles dependencies in a very specific way. We view dependencies as agreements between teams. So dependency relationships are managed by the individual teams. Taking a look at this dependency, which is showing a block, indicates that the Cowboys have asked for help from the Baltimore team. The reason that this one is blocked is that the commit date that the Cowboys have requested has not yet been committed to by the Baltimore team. As you're going through your planning process and as you are doing work in progress management, somebody is going to be keeping track of dependencies, and that can be done in a variety of ways. So in addition to a list of dependencies, many organizations really like this wheel view. The wheel view provides a view into all of the dependency relationships, in this case for the mobile program, for the quarterly increment QI5. Any relationship that has a blue connector indicates a dependency request that's been committed to by both teams. Green links are dependency work that has been completed. Red links indicate a dependency that is still blocked. So taking a look at the dependency for a particular team, you're going to see that we display both work that's needed for that team, in this case the Cowboys, as well as work that the Cowboys need from others. Scrolling down quickly through this list of dependencies, I can find the one that we were just looking at. And you can see that in this dependency, the reason the block that we saw before is that there's no commitment date. The dependencies are all focused around a specific piece of work in a specific time frame. Other dependency views, like the grid view, can provide some analytical information that can display the relationships and indicate problems that may be occurring not only within this particular quarterly increment, that others. That might include a team that's asking for help from lots of other teams, or perhaps a team that's providing an awful lot of help to every team. Once the planning is finished and you move into an active sprint, there are a number of ways to track work in progress. You've seen the strategy room, which was that executive view into the work. At the program level, there's another configurable room called the program room. This is where perhaps your product managers, your release train engineers, your scrum masters may spend a considerable amount of time. It consolidates a lot of important information into a single view. So not only do we see the progress going on in this program increment, they have access to the features as well as the connected underlying stories that are a part of this program increment. So here we see a feature with multiple stories connected. We also can see progress against the different levels of the work hierarchy. We can manage dependencies quickly from here, because dependencies will pop up during the course of work in progress. We can also take a look at the progress against the individual teams. Other things visible here might be things like risks, release events, which we talked about before, those higher level objectives, and you can go ahead and make changes and customize the view of the program board and all of these dashboards by moving some of these tiles around. Another useful view of work in progress is what we call the work tree. The work tree is a hierarchical view of work in progress. It can be viewed from a number of different perspectives. So here I'm actually showing a top-down view starting at the strategic goals, which can then be opened up to view the strategic themes, finally into the work initiatives, the features, and finally the Jira epics and the stories. This same view can be viewed at the portfolio level as well. There's also more of a bottom-up view, which is going to be something that people perhaps lower down in the work hierarchy are going to be focused on. And that's, let's take a look at what's going on starting from the program and working down through that work hierarchy, the initiatives, the Jira epics, and finally the stories. Once all of the data captured inside the bidirectional integration with Jira not only supports the dashboards and this work in progress, but provides access to real-time reporting. So as an example, a status report that might be viewed by somebody senior in the organization, taking a look at an individual program. This kind of report might ordinarily take somebody or a number of people quite a lot of effort and time to generate. And of course, once they generate the report, it's probably stale the moment that they create it. This is based on that real-time roll-up of information from Jira. It can provide some high-level progress information, as well as some qualitative health information, as well as other key information. But because this is live data, if there's something you need to know more about, like why is this particular initiative seem to be on the struggling a bit, you can drill in further and get more detailed information about what's related to this initiative in this case, as well as other information that might be relevant to figuring out what the real problem is. This same status information can be provided from a financial point of view. So information related to budgets, target dates for start and stop, CapEx versus OpEx, spend to date, project variances, all key information in determining whether or not a particular approach is delivering on value and staying within the investment strategy that's already been defined. Because your organization needs to collaborate seamlessly, Jira Align captures the work happening at every level. From executive teams where strategy is set and communicated down to the Agile software teams delivering work, intent and strategy are communicated down while progress, results, and outcomes flow back up. Thanks everyone for taking this tour of Jira Align. I hope it was helpful.
Brad, thank you very much. I've seen that demo before from you, and I'm just always shocked and amazed how much info you can get into such a tight time frame. Well done. Thank you for that. Just a reminder to everybody, put your questions out in the Q&A button. I see some coming in through chat. We'll get to those too, and we'll answer questions at the end, but feel free to dump those questions in there now. Brad, quick question for you. When we talk about doing Jira Align in large organizations, everyone being on the same set of tools is really hard and really kind of a pipe dream. Do you have to be an all Atlassian shop to adopt Jira Align?
No, in fact, many organizations will use many of the marketplace app offerings to enhance the use of Jira. And certainly we recognize that during transition and the transformation, there are still going to be waterfall projects out there. Those can be included as a part of your Jira Align management. And if you are using another team tool other than Jira, then we can certainly integrate with Azure DevOps or Rally or other team tools as well.
No, that's great. I think that's important just because it really is, trying to align the whole organization, right? Not just the teams that are using the Atlassian tools. I think that's great. Tracy, from your side, you've helped teams adopt Jira Align. What are some of the core skill sets that somebody needs when they come into this? How do you set up team members that are going to be interfacing with Jira Align? What should they bring to the table experience-wise?
That's a good question. Collaboration is the first thing that comes to mind. I think it's the most important skill set for all the teams from top to bottom through the organization. I think it's also really important for us to remember as we're collaborating that, what it was like the first time we all learned something new or tried something for the first time that seemed a little uncertain or new. And if we can keep that in mind, then we can be even more encouraging with our leaders, with our other team members, to fully adopt a new tool or a new process, whatever you have. But collaboration definitely top of the list.
No, I think that's great. Brad, one last question for you, and it's going to kind of tee us up into our next quick discussion area, which is, from your perspective, when is Jira Align not a good fit?
So Jira Align was designed for organizations that are looking to scale their Agile transformations. So if your development organization is relatively small, perhaps one release train, maybe one or two different programs that the teams are working towards, that's probably not an environment that is going to need to be scaled beyond that. However, the organizations that are looking to scale, sometimes in the thousands or tens of thousands of developers, as well as hundreds of programs supporting multiple portfolios where the information needs to roll up from a variety of places, the ability to be able to look across programs and to include information from a variety of different teams, that's the sweet spot for Jira Align. It doesn't have to be thousands of developers, but perhaps a set of development requirements that are going to allow you to look across those many programs or teams. That would be a good opportunity for Jira Align. That
makes sense. You want teams of teams and potentially teams of teams of teams. you know, kind of at that scale when you start to talk about it. Great. Well, Tracy, kind of take us home a little bit with, and let me share here. And, you know, talk us through some of the other alternatives we have out there.
Yeah, you know, like Brad was saying, that there's a certain sweet spot for Jira Align, and you know, if your organization isn't quite in that sweet spot, what are some alternatives? And you know, with the marketplace out there that Atlassian has, you know, it's a very, very strong ecosystem. There's over 4,000 apps and integrations available through the marketplace, and so these are a smattering of our favorites. Definitely some big call outs here to advanced roadmaps and big picture. I want to talk to those a minute here. Advanced roadmaps is a you know, a solution that's going to fit for those organizations that aren't quite at the scale like Brad was mentioning. It can certainly address those teams of teams at the program level, and comes, you know, with you can turn it on within Jira. Of course, the integration is not a problem at all. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Big Picture 8, because Big Picture 8 doesn't have the same, I'm going to say, assumptions about how the teams are working as Advanced Roadmaps does. So Advanced Roadmaps kind of assumes that the teams are working in a general Agile fashion. And if you're not working that way, you'll probably end up more than a little frustrated with Advanced Roadmaps. On Big Picture 8, on the other hand, is more feature rich, I'd say, than Advanced Roadmaps, in that it can fully support any safe implementation, but then it can also support those organizations that maybe aren't fully adoptive of safe and those methodologies or other scaling methodologies, and maybe have more you know, general planning, maybe more traditional project planning kinds of needs, you know, with Gantt charts, etc. So very, very feature rich call out there for Big Picture 8. And then of course we've got some of the other items here. I have yet to find like a one size fits all, right? So I love working with organizations to find out, well, what are the tools that you have in play already? What are the skill sets of your teams? What really are your requirements, so that we can find the best combination of tools for you, if that's, you know, the best route. So Easy Agile is another great call out here for those organizations that have started to adopt, like maybe the big room planning and that kind of timing and cadence for their teams. AHA also is a great integration with Jira. They have some, what I've seen AHA used in organizations that have a really strong product management team and presence has, but they've also come out with some recent functionality around individual capacity planning as well. So great tools to take a look at. And then on the last row here, you know, kind of turns into a toolbox of apps, because, you know, reporting might be something that is where your organization is at today, where they need some additional visibility in the reporting, and Easy BI is a clear call out, or Structure allows you to really take a look at the issues in your Jira instance in the manner that is most efficient for you. What kind of, you know, tree would you like to build with Structure? So those are some call outs I wanted to make sure that we touched on as far as other options if Jira Align isn't in the stars for you right now.
Great. Let me. So you know, we've got a lot of questions coming in, so I'll cut this discussion just a little bit short, but I do want to ask just one question of you, Tracy, which is, you touched on Easy BI and a reporting aspect. You know, a lot of times, I think a lot of times teams are struggling with just a visibility issue versus a, hey, we need a full-blown scaling Agile solution. Am I off base there?
You know, well, I can speak to a recent client, you know, that came to us with like, hey, the reporting is just not good. You know, the reports don't work. And so that was an opportunity for us to kind of go on a journey to find out, well, is it really the reports that are the problem? Or is there something else, you know, deeper going on that we could address, and then make the visibility of the work more apparent, you know, because I think in any organization that's looking to improve and grow, visibility is key, because if you can't see it, you can't address it. So yeah, that's what I've seen recently.
Great. Okay, we're just the last couple of slides, and then we'll dig in on those questions. So just to wrap it up, a little bit about the themes on what we're talking about. So, Agile transformation is a journey. Know why you're doing it and get buy-in. So that buy-in is at the most senior levels, and know why you're doing it. You're not doing it because you need tools. You're not doing it because you need SAFe. You're doing it because you want business agility. You're doing it because you want measurable differences in your business. You want actual business results. And then, all of this is tools help enable and empower, but should not be the goal. So just, when you're kind of evaluating and looking at tool sets, just keep those goals in mind and create a checklist of items that you go against to say, do these tools help meet these objectives? And then, that should help you find the tools that best fit your desired outcomes. Okay, so last little piece. Again, a little housekeeping. We will send all this out. Questions we don't get to today, we will also encapsulate and try to answer. If you want to talk to us today, feel free to reach out, isostech.com/agile. Sign up. We'll get you a detailed demo of Jira Align. I know there's a lot to see, and it's kind of hard to see in 15 minutes, so we can dive deeper on that. We have a Jira Align readiness checklist we'll walk you through. So is your organization ready? And then an Agile at scale assessment. So kind of that two-pronged approach. Are you ready for the tools, and are you ready for Agile at scale? And so feel free to reach out. Happy to have the conversation with everybody. Okay, with that, I'm gonna go. So we have some in chat, we have some in Q&A. I'm gonna take Robert's question because he was one of the first to ask. He asked it in chat. And Tracy, why don't you maybe take a stab at this one? And Brad, love to hear you weigh in too. Which of the Agile principles do you find the hardest for enterprises to adopt?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was kind of teetering between a couple of and I landed on business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. I've worked with so many organizations where the trust between business and technology has taken a big hit. And as a result, the eagerness for both of those teams to work together has definitely flown out the window. And so I think that that's one of the places that is really the most difficult to kind of rebuild the trust between business and IT, and be in it together and actually work together. I think it also kind of ties into kind of what Brad was saying, where there's the sometimes we see that maybe a leader will come out and say, here, make this happen, let it be done, and then they walk away. I think that that's also plays into the difficulty with adopting that Agile principle.
Brad, let me ask this question of you, because this gets into kind of the tool aspect of it. Do all the teams, from Peter Graves, do all the teams need to use the same cadences? Are there standard values for story points across teams?
So in Jira Align, cadences can be slightly different. We can knock off the rough edges and sort of bring the, maybe one team starts their sprint on a Monday, another starts their sprint on a Wednesday, and maybe there's a slight difference in some of their planning cadences. We can take those into account and give you a little wiggle room in order, again, to provide the standardized reporting that's necessary in order to properly manage things like dependencies, where time and the work item involved are key to ensuring that the work is going to get done on time. So that's not important, although we would highly recommend trying to standardize around an organization-wide cadence. That certainly is going to make things much easier as you begin to add more teams, more trains, and more programs into your environment. And I've forgotten the second half of your question.
Standard values for story points across teams.
No, we let the teams, so part of the Align approach is don't disrupt the teams. They're probably doing just fine. So we allow each team to do their own estimating as far as story points goes. And when we look at capacity planning as it relates to velocity and capacity, we're taking into account that each team is doing their own estimating.
Great. There's a couple questions in here around licensing, and I think maybe I could take a stab at that. And Brad and Tracy, you can tell me if I'm off base. But you know, think of licensing. This isn't an add-on to Jira. This is a separate product that you would license separately. Much like you don't get Confluence licenses with Jira, you buy licenses for Confluence. So hopefully that addresses kind of some of that licensing questions that are out there. Did Brad or Tracy, you want to add anything to that, or did I kind of nail that one?
The only thing I would add is that, you know, our pricing is very public and not that complicated, but it really starts with how many Jira users are going to be providing data into Jira Align, and that's where the licensing calculation would start.
I would expect nothing less from Atlassian. Public licensing is one of those reasons why we love you guys. Here's a good question from Cynthia, you know, I'll let you both take a swipe at it. It's a little bit product focused. So does it work across multiple Jira instances where, say, the initiative is in one instance and the program level issue types are in another with app links? So supporting a multi-Jira instance environment.
Brad, you want to?
Yeah, so the answer is when you add Jira Align into the mix, what you might be calling an initiative at the Jira level, which oftentimes is simply an empty Jira epic being used to connect a bunch of different other epics in other places, that all goes away. And the initiatives, as I've described them, those higher level work items, are created inside Jira Align, and the future Jira epics would then be connected to those initiatives inside Jira Align itself. So epics can be created inside Align and pushed to Jira, or epics can be created in Jira and pushed back to Jira Align. And then it's up to the strategy part, your portfolio owners, your product managers, your release train engineers, to make the strategic connection between those epics and the higher level initiatives.
Yeah, I think that, you know, I've worked with a lot of customers who are very familiar with Jira, and they're used to having like everybody inside of Jira. You know, the teams are working in Jira, the product owners, product managers, they're all looking at Jira because that's where the data is. And once you introduce Jira Align, there's a little bit of a change. You don't have the entire team inside of Jira Align. The teams continue to work inside of Jira, and then like Brad was saying, you have, you know, the leaders, the product owners, product management, those who are making strategic decisions in Jira Align as opposed to inside of Jira.
No, that's great. I think there's one other aspect to that question. I love that, hey, you know, these higher level things are going to live in Jira Align. Let's pull them out of Jira and scrap this kind of wacky structure that we put in Jira to try and support it. But I think there's another piece of that question, which is where you have federated Jira instances. So a lot of really large organizations will have multiple Jira instances. Can it pull data and interact with multiple Jira instances?
Yes, absolutely. That's part of the scaling aspects of Jira Align. You can interact with multiple Jira instances that could be in the cloud. They could be on premise, or they could be in both places. It really doesn't matter to Jira Align. It's really just a matter of making sure that there's connectivity between Jira Align and the individual Jira instances.
Awesome, cool. One last question I think we can get to, and it's from Ansar. As I see it, Jira Align has a lot of features and needs a lot of data before you start using it. Do you have any data preparation guidelines for starting to use Jira Align? You know, basically, you walked us through a lot of interface there, Brad. You know, how do you get your data going and represented? And maybe I'll push that back to Tracy, right? Why don't you take a swipe at that one? So how do you prep for starting to interact with Jira Align?
Yeah, well, we've got a checklist actually for organizations to get a better understanding of where they kind of fit. There's some review that we can do inside of your Jira instance to see, okay, are you lined up? Are you actually using epics as buckets for things, or are they really indicative of the value that you're looking to deliver through a PI? How are your sprints? How are you using those? How are those things set up? So there's definitely a list that we can walk you through and help you with that.
Awesome. So operators are standing by. That's isostech.com/agile. And I think that will be part of that assessment. Is that right, Tracy?
Right, yeah.
Cool. I want to thank everybody today, everybody for joining us. A lot of great questions. Our presenters, great job. And again, we'll share this out with everybody. The questions we didn't get to, we will be going through those and hopefully have a response to everybody later this week, early next week. So thank you very much.
Thank you.